This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, good evening, dear friends. We're continuing in Maseches Nedarim, Daf Hashavua, Daf Lamed Ches Amud Beis. We begin Lamed Ches Amud Aleph, 2 lines from the bottom. When somebody is usher to receive hana from someone else, or to give hana to someone else, v'zan es ishtai v'yaz banav, you're allowed, meaning the menader is permitted to feed his wife and his children. Even though the father, the husband and the father is obligated to support them. So you would think, how can the menader feed them, but he's giving hana to the person who he's not to give hana to? So the Mishnah says you're allowed to, because basically it's like paying off a debt. So whatever benefit you're giving to the husband or the father is, so to speak, roundabout. But v'lo yazanes behemta, you can't feed his animal, bein tameya, bein tahira, whether it's not kosher or if it's kosher. Rav Lezer oimer zanes hatameya, you could feed a non-kosher animal, ve'eno zanes hatahira, but you can't feed a kosher animal. Now, what's the difference? Why would the Tanakama says you can't feed either kind of animal, and Rabbi Lezer holds you could feed a treif animal, you can't feed a kosher animal? Well, what's the difference between a treif animal and a kosher animal? Amrulai, the Tanakama, the Chachamim said to Rabbi Lezer, Ma bein tamei l'tahira, why do you differentiate? We say you can't feed either. We say you can't feed either because when you feed someone else's animal, you make the animal bigger and more valuable. But why do you say that you could feed a treif animal but not a kosher animal? Amrulai, ma bein tamei l'tahira. Amar lahu, so Rabbi Lezer said back, Shahat tahira nafsha l'shamayim. A kosher animal, its soul, its spirit belongs to heaven. What does that mean, belongs to heaven? That means heaven doesn't allow you to eat it. But v'gufa shaloi, but the body belongs to him. What does that mean? When the animal is alive, you can't eat it. But when the animal is dead, you are allowed to eat it. So you can't feed the guy's kosher animal because you own. When it has spirit, when the animal is alive, heaven precludes you from eating it. But the body of the animal, when it dies, you are allowed to eat. So you're benefiting the owner by feeding the animal because the owner owns the body of the animal. But utemeya, a non-kosher animal, nafsha v'gufa l'shamayim. A non-kosher animal, its soul, meaning when it's alive, v'gufa, and when it's dead, l'shamayim, the heaven does not allow you to eat. You see, a kosher animal, when it's alive, you can't eat it. When it's not alive and you eat the body, that belongs to you. So you're giving benefit to the person who you made a neder not to benefit, as opposed to a non-kosher animal, where you're precluded from eating it while it's alive and while it's dead. So you're not benefiting the owner at all. Amrulai, so the Tanakama said back, the Chum said back, Avha Tameya nafsha l'shamayim v'gufa shalai. Even the non-kosher animal, to eat it while it's alive, you can't eat it. But the body does go to the owner. Why? Why does the body go to the owner? Because when it's dead, Shem Yirtza, Harihu Meichel Oivdei Kachavim, Oimachil Klavim. Because you could sell it to Goyim, who they could eat it. Or you could sell it for dogs to eat. And if it's fatter, it's more valuable. So the Chachamim say you can't feed, if you made a neder not to give somebody hana, you can't feed their animal if it's treif as well. Why? Because you're making it more valuable. Rabbi Lezer says that you can't feed a kosher animal because a kosher animal it's more valuable because it could be eaten. But in other words, the Tanakama says you can't feed either kind of animal. The Chacham say you can't feed either kind of animal because you're making either animal more valuable. True, while they're alive you can't eat either, but while they're dead you could either eat or sell either. Rebbe Lezer is of the opinion that you can't feed a kosher animal because that makes it more valuable. A non-kosher animal which cannot be eaten, you're not making it go up in value in a significant way. So now let's see the Ran on the Mishnah. The Ran says, Lamed Ches Amud Aleph, the Ran Divrei HaMaschal v'lo yazon es behemtoi bein tmeya bein tahira demehanhu hu mamash. You can't feed his animal because you're actually giving him hanam ibnei shamala b'damim. You're making him more valuable. Rabbi Lezer Omer zon es hatmeya. You could feed a non-kosher animal, as the Gemara will explain. Shekivan she'ein ba lemudar hana achila. Since the one who's also to get hana is not going to eat it, he's not getting hana through the food of the one who made the neder. V'gufa shalai, the body belongs to him. What does that mean? La'achila, can be eaten. Hilkach imafatim la mahanila. Therefore, if you fatten it, you're benefiting him. V'hatmeya nafsha v'gufa l'shmaim. A tummy animal, its soul and its body belong to heaven. She'ein loy ba heter achila. There's no heter achila. V'nimtza she'enoi nena b'pituma. And it comes out, you're not nena and being mefatim the animal, because there's no way to eat it. But to which the Chachamim say back, no, it's not true. The Chachamim say back, they do eat it. When it's fattened, they buy it for more money. Or they feed it to the dogs. And it comes out that you're nena by fattening it v'riboy besara. Okay. Says the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Yitzchak bar Chananya Amar Rav Huna. Rabbi Yitzchak Chananya said the name of Rav Huna, Hamudar Hana mechaveroi. If you are usher to get hana from your friend, if you have a neder that you're not going to get hana from your friend, mutar lahasi loy bita, you could marry to him his daughter. So we don't quite know who could marry their daughter to whom. Havi bar Rab Zera. Rab Zera asked on this. B'may askinan, what's the case? Ilema b'shenechse avi kala asur ala chasan. If the property of the father of the girl asur ala chasan is asur to the chasan, if the property, in other words, if the chasan is the subject of the neder, the chasan is the subject of the neder, and the nechasim of the father of the kala are asur to the chasan. So really, the father-in-law could marry off his daughter to the chasan, but the chasan's not to get hana, and he's certainly getting hana, because presumably if the father is marrying off his daughter, the father must be ketana. Harei moiser lo shivcha lo shamshay. By him giving him his daughter, he's giving him a shivcha. So that's for sure a hana. To give your young daughter in marriage to someone, it's like giving him a shivcha. But he's asar b'hana, he's the subject of the neder. So the case must be chasan asur alavi kala. Must be the property of the chasan is asur to the father of the kala, and yet the father of the kala is allowed to marry off his daughter to the chasan, even though now that he's marrying off his daughter to this guy, now the father no longer has to support his daughter, and the chasan is supporting the daughter. So you would think if the property of the chasan is asr to the father of the kala, the chasan is being mahana the kala. So Gemara says, Gedoyla mizu amru. Gedoyla mizu amru. In other words, and that would be the chiddush. The chiddush is that even though the property of the chassan is usher to the father-in-law, the father-in-law can marry off his daughter, even though he's gaining from this prospective son-in-law. But the Gemara says that's not a chiddush, it's obvious. Gedoyla mizu amru. We say even greater than this. Zan es ishtoi ve'es banav. The halacha is that someone who makes a neder is even allowed to, in our Mishnah we learned, could feed the wife. If you're not allowed to get hana from me, I'm allowed to feed your wife. I'm allowed to feed your children. And I have no responsibility to feed them. It's totally your responsibility to feed them. And yet the Mishnah says that if I cannot give you hana, I'm allowed to feed your wife and children. So if I'm even allowed to feed your wife and children that I'm not responsible to feed, certainly if I marry your daughter, I could feed her, and that's not called giving you hana. I'm allowed, I could feed your wife and children even though you're obligated to feed them. But and now Rav Huna, you're saying that you can marry off your daughter to me? It's obvious you can marry off your daughter to me. Says the Gemara, La'olam b'shenichsei avi kala asurim ala chasen. Really, we're talking about where the property of the father of the kala is usher to the chasan. How could he marry off his daughter to him? It's like he's giving her a shivcha. No, we're talking about where the daughter is a gedoyla. Ubebitoy boigeres. It's talking about where his daughter is a boigeres. A boigeres is meaning she's a gedoyla. She's over 12 and a half. Umidaita. And it's with her das. So therefore, it's not like the father is the one giving his daughter to this guy. She's consenting to do it. So that's not called being mahanahim. Tanya nami hachi, we learned in a brayso like this as well. Hamudar haname chaveroi. If someone is asar bahana from his friend, asar lahasilai bitai. So the guy can't marry off his daughter to him. However, he could marry off his daughter who's an adult with her consent. Let's see the Holy Ran. Hare Moser lo shivcha l'shamshay on the Gemara. The kasar kadaitek the bebitay nara askinan. We at first thought we're talking about where his daughter is a nara. Ella b'shenichsei chasan asurin alavi kala. It's talking about where the property of the chasan is asur to the father of the kala. The Kamash Malan, the chiddush is she'af al pi shenechasav asurin alav. The chiddush is that even though his nechasim are asur, mutar lahasi loy bitai, it's permitted to marry off his daughter. The chiddush is that even though my possessions are asur to you, you could marry off your daughter, even though even though now I will become obligated to feed her afterwards, and I'm benefiting you because until now you had to feed her. Gedoyla mizu amru zan es ishtay v'es banav v'chulu v'ad amrit mutar lahasiloi bitay koloymar imhu yachal lazan es bitay. If he is able to feed his daughter ba'oida b'rshusai while she is still in his rishus, if he is able to sustain his daughter, if the person who's now to give you hana could support his daughter while the daughter is in the person who's now to get hana's rishus, shu chayv b'mizonaseh, when he's chayv to feed her, kol shekain shu chalazan oisa acher shenasa, certainly he could feed her after she gets married, shenes chayv b'mizonos ishtay, because the person who's giving the hana is obligated to feed her. Umay kamashal and Rav Huna, what's Rav Huna's chiddush? If even when I can't give you hana, I could feed your daughter, certainly when I marry your daughter, now I have to feed your daughter, I could feed your daughter. Says, well, we're talking about ubebitoy boigares, deloy ihu kamasarla. He is not the one who's giving her over, elahi atzma, she's giving herself over. Umidaita, and it's with her consent. And now the Ran explains, the word umidaita taima kayahiv. We're giving a reason, lemilse, for the matter. Kalaimar, as if to say, Mishum hachi shari, this is the reason it's mutter. The hamidaita hi, it's with her das. The kivan shabagra, since she's an adult, shuv ein la'avia rishus, but her father doesn't have rishus in her. Inami, or ki ka'amar midaita, when it says midaita, lemauti daita dechasan. So the first pshat midaita is that the fact that you can't give me hana, so how could you marry your daughter to me? The answer is, you're not marrying her to me, she's doing it with her own consent. Inami, or ki ka'amar midaita, when it says with her das, lemauti daita dechasan. That's excluding the das of the chasan. Shem asoy shliach ledaber ima al iske nisuin, because if he made him a shliach to speak with him about nisuin, asr, that would be asr daha kamahanile, because he is giving him benefit. What's the Ran's second shot? The Ran's second shot, umidaita with her das, meaning she's doing a inami. You know what it means with her das? As opposed to, let's say the person who's now to get hana asked the father to ask her to marry this man. So the father, if he would be acting as a shliach on behalf of the person who's not to get hana, that would be a problem, because then he is being mahana him by doing his shlichus. Okay, new case in the Gemara. Amar of Yaakov, we're going to learn like the Ran here. Hamadir benoy letalmid chacham, letalmid Torah. If a person makes a neder not to get hana from his son, L'Talmud Torah, so that the son could be dedicated to Talmud Torah. Look in the Ran. Ha'av hidiroi shelo yahana aviv mimeno. The father made another. I'm not going to get hana from you. I'm not going to eat your food. I'm not going to use your clothing. I don't want any of your services. I want you to be totally free to learn Torah. He made a neder not to get hana from his son, so that his son could be completely free to learn Torah. So the Gemara says, if the father made such a neder, mutter l'malois lechavish shamayim, the son could fill up a barrel, a jug of water, ulahadlik haner, or light a candle for him. Rabbi Yitzchak amar litzlis ledag katan, the son could roast a small fish. Why? Look in the Ran. The mistama, because probably mimili zutri kihani, from such small types of benefits, the lekabahu bittul limud Torah, that don't cause the son to lose out from learning loy adre. The father never meant to make a neder. What's the reason the father made the neder? Because he wants his son to be totally dedicated to Talmud Torah. Okay, so things that don't really detract from the son's learning, the father never meant to aser. So these small things, the son could do for the father. Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Hamudar hana mechaveroi, someone is not to get enough from his friend, mutar lahashgoisai, koishal shalom. His friend could pour for him the cup of peace. Mainiu, what is the cup of peace? Hacha tergama, here, in Bavel they explained, Kais shal beis ha'evel, the cup of mourning, of the house of mourning. What does that mean? That we learned in Ksubis that when somebody is ba'avelos, they would drink many cups before the meal, during the meal, after the meal. Let's see the Ran. Mutter lahashkos l'kosh Hashem kolamer mutter l'shamsha b'kosh shel beis avel. What's the reason for that? Is it because it's not a hana, or he never meant to aser this? Let's see the Gemara a little bit further. The Ma'arava Amri, in the west, in Eretz Yisrael, they said, Kosh shel beis hamerchatz, it's the cup of the bathhouse. When you take a hot bath, you need to drink hot water afterwards. Otherwise it's considered dangerous or unhealthy. These two cups, you're allowed to get hana even though you're aser b'hana. Says the Ran Kalemer mutar l'shamsha b'kosh shel beis avel inami shel beis hamerchatz mipnei darkei shalom, out of civility. Shahaya darkan b'kach. This was the derech to drink these cups. This was the derech to drink when you come out of the bathhouse. It's almost not even considered a benefit. It's not a hana. It's not a significant hana. It's more like par for the course. When we udavka hay kosh shel mudar, the only cup, yes, you're allowed to drink the cup. I could serve it to you, but it can't be my water, it can't be my wine, because then you're actually being neneh from me. It's the service of me serving it to you. That's not considered a hana. That's just a service. It has to be the cup of water or wine of the person who's now to get the benefit. To just serve you in this situation alone, hitiru, it's permitted. Dumya de'idach, similar to the other case of the hamader espinoi l'talmud Torah, where since we allow the son to serve the father, provided that it's the father's water, because you never meant to aser that. Sheitiru leben l'malus l'avim mishal av. Okay. The Gemara continues. V'lo yazan es behemtai. You're now to feed his animal according to the Tanakam Chachamim, whether kosher or not. Kosher, you're fattening the animal. Even treif, you're fattening the animal. Now he could get more value for it. Tanya Yehoshua Ish Uza Omer. We learned in the Brayso, Yehoshua Ish Uza says, Zon Avadav V'Shivchoisav Haknanim. If someone made a neder, you're allowed to feed the person's male servants, female servants that are Canaanite, but you can't feed his animals kosher or non-kosher. This is going like the Tanakama, that you're not allowed to feed kosher or non-kosher animals, but you could feed his servants. Even though you'll ask, you're fattening the servants. My timer, what's the reason? The reason is, the Gemara says very simple. Avodav v'shivchoisav haknanim leman charusa avidan. Your servants and your maidservants that are Canaanite, they're made leman charusa. What does that mean, leman charusa? Rashi says, l'tzarech avoda asurin, v'lo l'hispatim. They're meant for working. So if they're meant for working, so then what difference does it make if they're fat or not? What difference does it make if they're fat or not? Behema leftuma avida. But an animal is made to be fattened, because if it's kosher, I could eat it. If it's not kosher, I could sell it to someone else to eat. But servants are made leman charusa. Leman charusa is for literally. Let's see how the Ran translates it. The Ran explains that the feeding that you could do is not the feeding the owner would have to do, because then you're saving the guy money. This is going on Rabbi Elazar. Let's see how the Ran interprets leman charusa. The Ran, in his Ika de Garci, is Goreis leman charusa all the way at the end. Klomer, what is a servant designated for? Klomer she'eino oimdin la'achila. They're not designated for eating. Ela lenachira ba'alma. They're meant to be ripped apart. What does that mean? When a servant dies, then you just, I'm sorry, according to the Istigar, Siman Churus says they're just left. Nobody's going to eat them, meaning of what relevance is it to fatten them? Fattening them is completely irrelevant. Nobody eats them, and therefore there's no benefit accrues by fattening them. The other girsa of the Ran is Laman Kirusa. They're meant for service. Also, fattening them is of no relevance. Okay, so that concludes Lamed Ches Amud Beis. Next week, hopefully regular, we could do Monday and Tuesday night, Be'ezras Hashem, a regular time. Okay, Rabbi Isai, thank you very much. Have a beautiful evening. Thank you. Good night. Good night.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.